It's time for a shaft test, and I'm testing the KBS TGI 110 against the Axiom 105X, and I'm using the Avoda Origin Demo 7 iron to do the test. And on a side note, I think the Avoda gloves are absolutely delightful. Lovely soft leather. They feel slightly thicker than other gloves, so I feel like they last longer. And so far the durability has been fantastic, but they're not the cheapest. But you get what you pay for. Right, Axiom is first swing of the day. Ooh, decent carry. I want it loose and fast. Yeah, more like that. So I want to see what the difference is in feel between the KBS and the Axiom, and I want to see what the difference in data is. I want to see if I get a bit more height with one or more spin or whatever it is, because I generally see absolutely fantastic dispersions with the Axiom shafts, but they do cost more than any other iron shaft in the market. Fair enough, but they do a good job. So if I go 3 at a time, beautiful, then I'll get a little idea of the direct difference in feel between the two. So the 110 model is about 110 grams, not exactly, you have to Google it to find out the exact weight of the shaft. So I tend to run with what model number it is. And sometimes you'll have a model of shaft that's the 105 model, but in a stiff and an extra stiff and a regular, they're all different weights to each other. They're not always the same weight. But here we go. KBS TGI 110. Now the TGI are the firmest version of the graphite iron shafts from KBS. You have the TGI, the firmest, Tor graphite iron, Players graphite iron a little bit softer, and the Max, which is even more helpful for the slower swing speeds, or those that load the club differently. KBS TGI 110. So I've seen a lot of golfers go to these sorts of shafts coming from 120 gram, 130 gram extra stiff or stiff in their iron shafts. And generally speaking, we can get something that is lighter than that 120, 130 steel shaft without compromising the stability and consistency of the shaft. Because normally, historically, when we've gone into graphite iron shafts, they've had a bit more play in them and not been attractive to maybe the faster swing speed players. But there's a nice little draw. It did feel just that little hair firmer than the Axiom. And it's more to do with the type of shaft than it is the weight of it. So the type of shaft, even in a 90 gram, even in an 80 gram, is firmer. We just have less weight to do it with. So it'll be interesting to see if I get a difference in side spin. So the amount of draw that I can create, I do generally favour the little draw. And if I can use anything that just reduces how much draw I can create, then I have my direction a little bit more tamed and I can commit to the shot a bit more, knowing that it's harder for it to swing left. And on the flip side of that coin, if you have the ball that sneaks out to the right hand side, you don't want to be using a shaft that's going to encourage that bad shot. So I'm catching them just a tiny bit thin, so just a little bit low on the face, which will up the spin a little bit. And I think it's because the shaft has less bend than the Axiom. And I'm talking like half a groove. Back to the Axiom. Oops, sticky. So with the KBS shafts, you don't have any flex stated on the shaft. You just have the TGI at 110, which I like because it kind of takes the ego away a little bit, because sometimes you go, I've always used a stiff shaft, I must use a stiff shaft. Well, it doesn't matter anymore because it doesn't even say what flex it is. You just use the one that works, especially if you get the chance to hit them and get fitted for them. Avoda are really good for that because they have them in their demo kits and they actually use the KBS graphite shafts in part of their fitting process. Back to the Axiom. Smoother, softer. Smoother, softer. I might hit a couple at the end with the Axiom 125X to sort of see where that sits. I won't hit as many shots, but I have found that to be quite a firm shaft indeed. So there's a few things within a shaft that influence how high it goes, how much it spins, and all those other lovely things. Now, when the shaft bends on the way back and releases back into the ball, and it will add loft shut the face if it has more twist and torque. So there is an element of height and spin that comes from the behavior of the shaft, but then there's also how the shaft reacts to you. So if you don't have enough speed or aggression in your load to bend and release the shaft, it will change how the face behaves. So if I have a shaft that's really soft, it might bend and release and shut the face a bit more and actually go lower, when on paper it should go higher. So there is a bit of a crossover with speed. So testing is absolutely advised. When you go for testing or you're looking to buy online relative to something you've already had, I just want to try and give you an idea of what you want to be looking at when you go there, so you're a bit more informed in your endeavours to find better shafts for yourself. Oh, I lunged at it a bit. On the green. So how many shots do I have? I have 1, 2, 7 against 4. So if I go one more Axiom 105X, one more of these. That's my normal miss. So I'm kind of used to seeing it. Yeah, it's all right. Landed in the same sort of space. Yeah, let's go one more. Now I'm fighting it. There we go, that's an actual golf swing. Throw the club through the ball. Back to the KBS TGI 110. It does feel a little bit more laboursome to get through the ball. I feel like I've got more rigidity to get into the ball, so I've got to try a little bit harder. Now, if someone swings slower before they go faster, you're not going to get the shaft to bend and react as much as someone who gets the club going bang bang, and then you get the club to react a bit more. So this is kind of why different profiles of shaft exist, is because when someone has a different load in the backswing, a different shaft will suit that player. And if you're using a shaft that's not something that suits you perfectly, you then have to work and react to the shaft, which is why Avoda's fitting system kind of exposes that sort of idea. You have a go with in the 80 gram, so it doesn't matter who it is. Use the 80 gram in the max, PGI and TGI, and there will be one that suits you better. There will be one that just feels easier to put through the golf ball. So then you discover, oh, I like that category of shaft. And then you sort of carry on from there. Boink. I mean, I could absolutely play with either of these shafts. I would just prefer to use something that works with me. Oh, just a bit skinny. Different reaction from the shaft. I'm getting more thin strikes with that, and I didn't get any with the Axiom. It's a good shot though. Let's throw the 125X in there from Axiom and see how it compares to the TGI 110. Whoa. I felt like I had to get more into that to get it to work. I couldn't quite keep up with it as such. So again, it's gone left because I've had to react to the feeling. Wow, that is more work. I can get it to work, but I'm almost having to consciously increase my effort. But you get used to it after a few swings. All right, one more, then we'll have a look at the difference. Whoa. Yeah, there's more spread because I'm having to work too hard for it. Okay, I could get used to it, but I don't need to. So 125X, this is a good sign that it's not a good shaft for me, is I've got a massive variance, 20 feet variance in height, just from like the variable location of strike. I'm working too hard for that, but on average it's 112 feet against 109 feet in the KBS TGI 110. I also have a bit of variance in here. I've got 98 feet there, 94 feet there, up to 119. So it's a similar spread for me in height. Angle of descent 48 in the KBS against 48.7 in the 125 Axiom. When we go up to the 105X, we get 115 of peak height, so I've got more height from the Axiom by 6 feet. I have 49.2, I've got a steeper landing angle, so it's coming in steeper. And the amount of draw spin, I've got Axiom 164 draw, and I've got 391 on the KBS TGI. When I go to the Axiom 125, I've got 488, but I've got nearly 1200 there, and then some right spin in that one. So again, the height and the side spin, massive variance for me in the 125 because it's too much shaft for me. And again, spin varying 1000 as well, not ideal even on a 4-shot spread. But the 125 does have a place for those brutal swingers out there that put more pace and quicker, snappier transition than me into the ball. So we have dispersion rings. The tightest one there is the red one, which is the KBS TGI 110. Interesting. So the Axiom 105 stiff, I had one that leaked out to the right that spread it out a little bit further. 125, much bigger left to right spread. I'm working too hard for that shaft. But directionally, the Axiom average just to the right-hand side. The other two were a bit more central. And in a nutshell, we've got 186, 187, and 185. We've got 2 yards of difference between each shaft. So I'm going to choose any of those shafts, get on the course, and I'm going to plan for that yardage, regardless of how these behave. But I'm going to make the choice that leans to the right-hand side for me because I don't like that left side of it. But there's that little bit of firmer feel. We've got 131 ball speed, tiny bit slower in the TGI, but I did catch a few just a little bit lower in the face. Now lower in the face will be touch slower, touch lower, touch higher spin, but it was still lower spinning and lower peak height than the Axiom. So the KBS TGI could well get that ball flight down just a smidge if you're worried about hitting the ball into wind, for example. You can also influence that just as much with a change in golf ball. So I do have other golf ball videos to show you the light on that. Launch angles within 0.6 of a degree with each other, but slightly highest on the Axiom 105. And the KBS kept up and kept ahead by 1 yard because of that spin being just that little bit lower than the 6.3 I found on the Axiom. And then spin higher than the KBS on the Axiom, but I had more variation in it. Just because I'm working too hard, I've got to try too hard to get that shaft to work, which is a thing. But for those of you wondering how the 125 sits into it, there you go. Really, I do actually quite like both shafts there. In the KBS, I just prefer the feel of the PGI. It's just a slightly softer, smoother feeling shaft for me. But again, my transition's not loading the shaft that much. If you have a bit more aggression in the backswing, let's say, you're going to potentially prefer the TGI. But have you had a go with any of these shafts? Let me know in the comments and we'll have a little chat. But other than that, I'll see you on the next video.